Hello, my name is Matthew, and I'm going to make another response video. This is not book related, but maybe it's interesting anyway. And I was just watching a few BookTube YouTube videos. I watched Lukash at Totally Pretentious. He just recently made a very interesting video on the differences and preferences between atheism and agnosticism. And in his video, he talks about why, for him, atheism is a better standpoint for his life. And his argument, which is a strong one, is that there's no evidence to support the existence of God, and without that evidence, the only conclusion would be that God doesn't exist. He doesn't, and an atheist wouldn't believe in God, and that's fine. Steve Donahue made also a really interesting video talking a little bit about the points that Lukash brought up, but also another video which I can't think of at the moment. And it was a response to the 5 problems of atheism. And Steve Donahue basically dismissed agnosticism outright as not being even fit for conversation. You can have religious beliefs, have faith, or you can be an atheist. And from what I gathered, what he was communicating is that those are the only 2 options afforded to you in any sort of strong, rigorous, intellectual conversation. And I also watched a video from Jason Harrigan this morning. It was a book review, but he also talked about really interesting aspects of his faith, and a really good point that he made was the difference between religion and faith. And with all of these videos, I felt that the term agnosticism kind of got the short end of the stick. And I thought I would just throw in my 2 cents on what I think of it all. And there's a few points. One, my main viewpoint is that agnosticism is the most natural conclusion to atheism. So the way that it's normally put is that agnosticism is sort of waving your hands up in the air and saying, I don't know, and being indecisive. Whereas for me, it's getting to the point where you no longer care. Whether or not God exists is irrelevant to your daily life, and it has no importance, and it's not worth thinking about. And if you're an atheist and your standpoint is that God doesn't exist, and maybe you're even to the point where you identify yourself as an atheist, you have conversations and you say, I'm an atheist. Well, at some point you would imagine you would stop thinking about and stop identifying with something that you don't believe. You would just ignore it and not care. And I think that's a very strong argument. It's not a matter of, well, I don't know one way or another, as opposed to um, it's irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. It's not an interesting conversation to have on a very personal level. It's an interesting conversation to have um, when it's um, a productive, positive conversation that's respectful with friends or um, sensible colleagues. And I also think it's a really good point that when you do have those conversations with anybody, with Lukash or Steve Donahue or Jason or anybody that you feel is sensible, you're already talking about religion or faith agnostically. Um, I think all of those videos, and normally anyone that has these kinds of conversations in a productive way, will couch all of the statements with, I don't judge how someone else believes. I don't judge someone else's belief system. I can respect someone if they're an atheist or a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or any faith. And basically what you're saying when you do that is that you don't care. You don't care what they believe. Not in a negative way, but just that you're going to judge somebody on their behavior, on their actions, on the words that they say and how they conduct themselves to you and others, not on their belief system. And that is an agnostic standpoint. When you go about your life and you're in stores, at the grocery store, at the gas station, or even in traffic, and you're interacting with the world and you're around people, if you're sensibly minded, you're not conflating or connecting the good service that you had at the grocery store with whether or not someone believes one way or another. You're just taking their behavior, and that's it. Now, Lukács made a point saying that he would say to an agnostic, well, what about the Loch Ness Monster or aliens visiting Earth? Would you say that maybe they can exist, I just don't know? Or would you say there's clearly no evidence and that's something that I can just say? That it's a strong likelihood that the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist and aliens haven't visited Earth. And for the Loch Ness Monster, for that example, I'll just say it just doesn't matter. I don't care enough to have a strong opinion. I just don't. I don't think it exists, but whatever. I don't care. The UFO analogy, or aliens, though, can be much more interesting, because let's imagine that we have today a really great video, high def, color, clear, not shaky video of a UFO in the sky doing things that we know from what we understand from airplanes and physics and aerodynamics and things like that couldn't possibly happen. Can't see exactly what it is, but it's doing things that we would say that's a UFO. So you could have one group of people, let's say there's 3 of us watching the video. You have one person that says, that's a UFO. That's definitely not an airplane, it's not a rocket or a missile. Clearly, that's an alien spaceship. Well, someone else, the second person might say, well, no, it's an unidentified flying object. We can agree on that. But it's most likely some sort of satellite, or it's some new stealth technology that we don't know about, or something like that. It's a space balloon or whatever. That's what it is. But the third person might just say, well, it's a UFO. It's unidentified. And that's it. It's just unidentified. You don't know. You can watch it, and you can make one conclusion that might be less likely. You can make another conclusion that's maybe more likely. Or you could just say, until you know more, there's nothing to have an opinion about. It's not worth having an opinion. And something else that I'll say is that being open-minded enough to having a transcendental experience. So let's say that you don't believe in God, and one day something happens. God himself or herself comes down from the heavens and sits down with you and has a conversation in reality. Let's say that happens. Well, I don't know Lukash personally, or Steve Donahue or Jason, but I've watched enough of their videos that I feel that I get a sense of their temperament, their sensibilities, how they carry themselves in the world. And I believe that any one of those people, or people that I respect and care about, and myself, after that transcendental moment, what would happen? How would your behavior change? I would guess not very much. If you're already conducting yourself in a way that aligns with your own worldview, and you feel like you're doing a pretty good job getting through the world, what special thing? Is it going to be a dietary restriction, or not going out on certain nights? Like, in my mind, those could be even trivial. How are you behaving with the people around you? Are you acting differently? Do you behave differently? And I don't think that it would be true. So it's really a matter of the standpoint of agnosticism, in my mind, is that it's not worth talking about. That you're going to either be a good person, or you could be a jerk. And as far as evidence goes, you can see that. There's all sorts of religions in the world, and historically there's been all sorts of different religions that have come and gone and changed and mutated and things like that. And there's been atheists. And a whole spectrum. And in that whole spectrum, there's been lots of good people that have faith, and there's been lots of good people that don't believe in God, and then lots of bad people in both parties as well. You can believe in God and be a good person, or you cannot believe in God and not be a good person. The other thing I'll point out is, like, maybe a comparison. I don't know if this is a great comparison, but when you're talking about the existence of God, you're basically talking about something that you can't prove. A religious person might say that there is no evidence, that's why it's belief, and so you have to take a leap of faith. Beforehand, you don't know anything, but if you take a leap of faith, you can believe. Well, a parallel to that might be if we talk about predicting the future. And if I said to you, a year from now, do you think scientists will discover a new moon going around Jupiter? Do you think that that'll happen next year? And you might say, no, definitely not. That's absolutely not going to happen. We know about all the moons. And if I said, so you're absolutely 100% certain that that's the case, you can predict the future and know that a year from now that won't happen. And you'll probably come to terms and say, well, I don't know, but I don't know enough about it, and it's not anything that really interests me. Well, another example about predicting the future would be, are the New England Patriots going to win the next Super Bowl? And let's say that you're a sports fan. You're really into all the football teams. I'm not, but let's say you are. Well, you might have convictions and say, well, no, the Patriots have a great team. They have a great coach. They're going to go on, and they're definitely going to win this next season. Someone else might say, well, they just lost Tom Brady. That's a huge hit. They're definitely not winning this year. And you could be much more likely to avoid the whole thing about whether or not avoid the fact that you're predicting the future. You just to take that right out of the argument and just talk about what you know. And the difference between predicting a Super Bowl win and predicting a new celestial object might just come down to what you care about. Whether or not there's a moon on Jupiter, a new moon, has no impact on your life. It doesn't mean anything, and it's not worth discussing. Whereas a Super Bowl win, all your friends are watching the Super Bowl. It's fun to talk about. We're engaging. And in my mind, that's the difference between agnosticism and atheism. If you want to be in the conversation and you don't believe, that's your avenue. As opposed to saying, I don't want any part of it. I don't care enough to have to have a really strong opinion one way or another. There might as well be another moon on Jupiter, for all I care, whether or not God exists. It's a matter of returning your ticket. This is a very long video. I'll end it there. I hope that I made, at least I hope I made sense. I should have said this at the very beginning of the video, but leave a comment if you would like. And since this can be a touchy subject, just be respectful to others, and don't be rude. I hate to have to caution that way, but we all need to get along and respect each other. We all need to be agnostic about it. So yeah, that's it. Please leave a comment if you'd like, and thank you for watching.